Proceed, counsel.
Tracy, where do you live?
I live at 421 Market Street in Centerville, Pennsylvania.
Have you always lived there?
No, I moved to Centerville in early June 1993 from Denver, Colorado.
Do you go to school?
Yes, I attend Centerville High School.
And are you involved in any activities there?
Yes, I am a member of the ski and snowboard teams, and at my old high school in Denver, I was a member of the National Honor Society.
Do you have any plans to continue these activities once you graduate?
Church Honor, I feel it's the relevance of this line of questioning fire on the 7th of August.
Counsel, do you care to respond to the objection?
Your Honor, one of our claims is that Darrell Claiborne was skateboarding negligently. We plan to show that Tracy is an avid and experienced skater, and even she was frightened by the intensity of the hill, and by skateboarding on this hill, Darrell was acting negligently.
All overrule the objection. The claim sends back to the presentation of the evidence. Proceed, counsel.
Okay, I'll ask you again. Do you plan to continue your activities once you graduate?
Well, I hope to become a member of the U.S. ski team, and that's why I skateboard, to keep in shape for skiing.
Tracy, do you know the defendant, Darrell Claiborne?
Yes, I do.
Have you ever gone skateboarding with him?
Yes, once.
Directing your attention to August 7th, 1993, at about 7 o'clock, what were you doing then?
Well, that's when Darrell had come over my house. We had plans to go skateboarding at Fink's Garage. That's where all the kids go skateboarding. And that's when Darrell arrived at my house, and we began walking over to Fink's Garage.
What time did you get there?
Around 7:30.
Tracy, what was the first thing you saw when you arrived at Mr. Fink's property?
Well, I noticed that the whole property was surrounded by a fence.
Was there a gate?
Yes,
Was this gate locked or unlocked?
there was a padlock on the gate.
Did the presence of this fence keep you and your friends off of Mr. Fink's property?
No, it did not. Darrell and I found a hole in the side of the fence, and we decided to crawl through the hole.
If there was a fence there, why did you think that you could crawl through it and use Mr. Fink's property?
Well, I really didn't think that we could crawl through it, but Darrell assured me that the fence...
Counsel, do you care to respond?
Your Honor, this is not hearsay. This is a statement made by the adverse party, Darrell Claiborne, and is therefore an exception to the hearsay rule.
Counsel,
I would like to respond to that. It's not relevant to the fire issue that took place that evening.
all overrule the objection.
Would you like to finish? Why did you think you could use Mr. Fink's property?
Well, like I said, I really didn't think that we could, but Darrell assured me that the fence was there for burglars and not skateboarders, and since I'm new in the town, I went along with him.
Okay, what happened once you were through the fence and onto Mr. Fink's property?
I noticed the hill, and I got nervous because it was steeper than I imagined. And even though I'm a pretty good skateboarder, I told Darrell and his friends to go first and that I'd watch them.
What happened next?
Darrell must have been nervous too, because his skateboard hit a rock and flew out from underneath of him and disappeared into the building through a window.
Objection, Your Honor. Your Honor, I'd like to strike the part of witness's answer saying Darrell must have been nervous. That's gone in conclusion.
Your Honor, counsel is right. Tracy, could you please limit your answers
Very
to
well,
exactly
sustain that objection.
what you heard and saw that night? What were you doing while this happened?
Well, when I was watching them skateboard and I heard the glass break, I got scared and I began to run away. I threw my skateboard over the fence so that I could crawl through the hole faster. And then I ran home through a shortcut in the woods that I had found a couple days earlier. I figured that it'd be safer to run home through the woods.
What happened while you ran home?
Well, I tripped over a rock and my skateboard fell from my hands and went down a steep bank into a creek. The bank was so steep I couldn't even retrieve my skateboard.
After this, did you go right home?
Yes, directly home.
Did you tell anyone what happened?
I told my parents I'd lost my skateboard. I was so preoccupied with going right upstairs and calling Darrell. I really was worried that he'd get in trouble for breaking the window.
Did you speak to Darrell?
No, when I called, he wasn't even home yet.
Tracy, did you tell your parents what happened that night at Fink's Garage?
I told my parents that I'd been skateboarding there, and then we went right to the police.
At any time that night at Fink's, did you ever enter his building?
No, I did not.
Objection, Your Honor. You have spoken the witness's affidavit.
Counsel, do you care to respond?
Your Honor, in her affidavit, she states that she does not remember telling Darrell that she ever went into Mr. Fink's building, and it is a likely conclusion that if she doesn't remember telling Darrell that she didn't go into his building, he didn't. She could not.
It does state that she never told Darrell, but it does not mention whether or not she was in that building. The fact is, whether or not she told Darrell that she was in that building is not relevant. Whether she was actually in that building does not state that this affidavit.
Well, perhaps if you could focus upon what you told Darrell.
Probably return the question. Tracy, did anything else happen that night at Fink's garage?
No, nothing else.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Very well. Would the defense like to close the hearing, please? We would, very well.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Hill. How are you?
No more things.
Mind if I call you Tracy?
Sure.
Now, this fence around Fink's property, it had a hole in it, didn't it?
Yes, that's how Darrell and I crawled through.
Now, this hole was pretty easy to climb through, wasn't
Yes, we got through.
it? It didn't actually look much like a fence, did it?
Well, it was a fence, and a fence is a fence.
Your Honor, I'm showing opposing counsel the affidavit. May I please read?
Sure.
I'd ask you to read number 6 here, number 6 here.
The fence looked about 100 years old. It was rusted, and there was a hole on one side.
Now, Tracy, you didn't see a sign on this fence, did you?
No, I didn't.
Also, you said in your direct that you were afraid of this hill. Now, how do you expect to be on the U.S. ski team if you're afraid of a small incline like this?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevant.
Withdrawn.
Very well.
Now, Tracy, isn't it true that you were in fact in the building that evening?
I'm sorry.
Isn't it true that you were in fact in the building that evening?
Objection, Your Honor. They have not laid any proper foundation. And as they said, this is not in the affidavit. There's no way.
Counsel, can you respond?
I'm simply asking her whether or not she was in the building as a vital part of this case.
Your Honor, there's been no proper foundation laid.
It's cross-examination. I'll give some
Would you like me to repeat?
Sure.
Were you in the building, in fact, that night?
No, never.
Now, when you got home, you told your parents you had a great time, didn't you?
Yes, I wanted to go call Darrell right away.
Now, even when you got home, you told them your skateboard was lost, but you still didn't tell them the whole truth, did you?
No, I was really
Yes or no, I
preoccupied
should suffice.
with calling
Yes or no?
Darrell.
Please.
I'm sorry?
Yes or no, please.
No, I didn't tell them how it happened.
Now, didn't it in fact take a news broadcast to get the truth out to your parents?
Well, that's when they approached me, and that's when I told them.
Fink paid you $250 to free you from negligence, didn't it?
Fink paid me $250?
Or, I'm sorry, you paid Fink $250, I apologize.
Yes, my parents paid me.
Now, this isn't pay for testimony or anything like that, is it?
Objection, Your Honor. First of all, irrelevant and argumentative. Any payments that happened after the settlement have absolutely nothing to do with anything that started the fire or August 7th, 1993 in general.
Counsel, can you respond?
I have nothing further.
Very well. Ma'am, you missed it. Counsel, at this point, does the plaintiff rest this case?
Your Honor, before we rest, I move that Exhibit 1 be admitted into evidence.
Very well. Any objection, counsel?
Your Honor, let me try to figure out exhibit 1.
I think it's the expert's report from the
Oh,
Very well. We'll admit you plaintiff's exhibit 1 into evidence.
Your Honor, may I publish it to the jury?
Sure.
Your Honor, we now rest.
Very well. Would the defense like to bring in any evidence in support of their case?
We would, Your Honor.
Very well. Would you like to call a witness?
We'd like to call Darrell Claiborne to stand, Your Honor.
Very well.
Daryl Claiborne,
My last name.
C-L-A-I-B-O-R-N.
Will you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You may be seated and give your voice up.
How you doing today, Daryl?
Fine.
Please restate your name, age, and address for the court, please.
Daryl Claiborne, I'm 16 years old. I live at 356 East Palm Street in Centerville, Pennsylvania.
Daryl, can you please tell the court of your occupation experiences?
Yes, I work part-time during the school year at the local savings and trust bank. During the summer, I'm employed full-time. Ever since my father died 4 years ago, finance has been very tough, and a portion of my weekly paycheck goes towards groceries and clothes for my sister, mother, and myself.
Daryl, do you have any activities outside your occupation?
Yes, in my free time, I enjoy skateboarding.
Daryl, now can you please tell the court what happened on the night of August 7th, 1993?
Yes. I had just gotten back from 2 weeks from visiting my grandmother who was recuperating from surgery. And when I got back, as I said, I hadn't been there for 2 weeks and I enjoyed skateboarding. So I called up my friend Tracy and we decided to go skateboarding that day. So I met her at her house and then we walked over to Fink's property where we go skateboarding. It's got a large incline.
Daryl, when you and Tracy arrived at Mr. Fink's, what, if anything, did you see?
I saw a fence which I had never seen before. It had a few holes in it. It looked a bit rusty, and in places it had shaken wire.
Sir, there's an objection.
That answer does not conform to the information contained in Mr. Claiborne's affidavit.
Counsel,
May I respond? Yes, sir. I'm just asking Daryl, I think he's capable of determining what the fence looked like. That's all.
It's not in his affidavit, Your Honor. The part, he said that it has a few holes in it, nowhere in as far as the spaces is it in fact in that.
very well, we can just ask the witness to try and limit his answer to what's actually contained in the affidavit.
Okay. Daryl, after you saw the fence, was anything discussed when you were there?
Well, again, I hadn't been there for 2 weeks, and I wasn't sure at that time whether here's a new fence. I didn't know what it was for, but Tracy and I began discussing whether or not we should go inside the fence. But Pat and Charlie, our other two friends, were already inside, so we entered Fink's property.
Okay, Daryl, when you entered inside Mr. Fink's property, what occurred?
Well, I got ready to take my first run, and I tied my shoelaces, got the board ready, and whatnot, and then I took my first run. And it's never happened to me before this, and I was going down the hill, and I don't know what happened. It was a rock or something. Anyway, I hit it, and the board slipped from underneath my feet, and it crashed into the window.
Daryl, after your skateboard crashed into the window, what did you do?
I immediately panicked. I figured, police would be coming. It would have an alarm system, so police would be coming, so like that. So I wanted to get out of there as fast as I could.
Where did you go?
I ran back towards to get out of the property and towards the hole again, which we entered.
Daryl, when you got to the hole, did you see anything or anyone?
I noticed Tracy leaving the property without her skateboard.
Daryl, after you noticed this, where did you go to?
Well, I ran to the woods, which was adjacent to Fink's property, and I waited there for a good half an hour to see if the police would come.
Did the police ever come?
No.
What happened after you were in the woods?
Well, again, I waited a good 30 minutes, half an hour, so I went down to see if I could possibly fish out my skateboard from Fink's property.
Were you able to retrieve your skateboard?
Yes.
What did you do with the skateboard that you just received, or retrieved rather?
Well, how I retrieved it, I used a wire which was left over from the fence. It was the same material as the fence. And I looked in the property to see if I could get my skateboard. And I looked down, and inside the shop there was 2 cars and paint cans and newspapers near a radiator, and my skateboard was on the floor near the window, so I was able to fish it out with the wire. I just looped it around the wheels so I could bring it out.
After you fished your skateboard out, what did you do?
I wanted to see it was cracked, so I wanted to see if I could possibly mend it with this wire. And I wrapped it around and took a run, but it was obvious that it wasn't going to work. So when I left on my way home, I threw it in a trash dumpster.
Gerald, when you got home, please tell the court what happened.
Well, when I got home, I was real, mad at myself for breaking the window. I wanted to call Mr. Fink, whose property it was, but I didn't have his number, and it was late by that time. So.
Objection, Your Honor. Again, this testimony is not in the witness's affidavit. Do you have the witness's
Counsel, do you care to respond to that?
He's just responding to what he did when he got back that night, Your Honor. Whether it's in the affidavit or not, I'm just simply asking what he did when he got home.
But, Your Honor, my trial rules of evidence state that you cannot make up anything outside of the affidavit.
Yes, we'd ask if the witness could limit his responses to information contained in the affidavits.
Okay, Darrell, when you got home, did you talk to anyone?
Not that night. The next morning, I called up Tracy, and we discussed the fact that she was in the building when my skateboard.
Counsel, there's an objection. You care to respond?
May I respond, Your Honor?
Certainly.
His statement is a statement against Tracy's pecuniary and penal liability at the time of the conversation, and therefore it's an exception to the hearsay rule, and we ask that it be admissible.
Counsel, do you care to respond?
Your Honor, this is a statement made by Tracy, and it is not an exception to the hearsay rule.
Very well, I'm going to sustain the objection at this point.
Darrell, how did you learn about the fire?
Well, when I was on the phone with Tracy, my mother yelled downstairs that Fink's property had indeed caught on fire.
And what did you and your mother do next?
Well, I was going to contact Mr. Fink, but the police contacted me because they knew that I had been skateboarding. I frequently used Mr. Fink's property to skateboard.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
Would the plaintiff like to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Now, on August 7th, 1993, Mr. Fink didn't tell you that you could skateboard on this property, did he?
Objection, Your Honor. Something else that's on the side here. You mentioned in a conversation with Mr. Fink, the witness.
Your Honor, that's
Counsel,
exactly
can you
why I'm
respond?
asking. Your Honor, that's exactly why I'm asking. And neither party has stated that there's any conversation that takes place. Mr. Fink states that he's never told Darrell that he could skateboard on his property, and Darrell mentioned nowhere that they had had a conversation.
May I respond, Your Honor? It's precisely what's beyond the scope. There's no indication of conversation. That's why we're asking this witness if he had permission to come to his property. In fact, that's what
Counsel, correct you. Let's move on.
Darrell, when you arrived at Mr. Fink's property that night, you saw a fence, didn't you?
Yes.
Now, this fence surrounded Mr. Fink's entire property, with the building and the incline, didn't it?
Yes.
And it was clearly visible.
Yes.
Now, Darrell, doesn't a fence mean to stay out?
Depending on the situation, I would say yes, but we'd always been there. Mr. Fink had never told me we couldn't use it, and I assumed that it was all right. I hadn't been there for 2 weeks, and the other guys seemed to think it was all right. In fact, when I got there, they were already inside.
Okay, Darrell, when you got into the property, you crawled through a hole and entered onto Mr. Fink's private property, right?
Yes.
Now, when you got onto the property, you began your first skateboarding learn, right?
I tied my shoes and stuff like that first.
Now, at that point, you lost your balance and your skateboard flew up into the air, crashed through a window of Mr. Fink's garage, right?
Yes.
Now, when you say that your skateboard crashed through the window of the garage, you're really saying that the skateboard entered the garage building, aren't you?
That's what I'm saying.
Now, when the window broke, you ran as fast as you could from the garage, didn't you?
Yes.
And Tracy and the rest of her friends, they all ran to the kitchen.
Yes, I assume.
Now, to your knowledge, they all went home, or at least they didn't stick around.
Objection, Your Honor.
I have no idea.
Counsel, what's the basic objection?
Asking the witness to draw a conclusion about facts that are not discussed in the knowledge.
Your Honor, I'm only asking to his knowledge. He says that he does state in the affidavit that they all left. I'm
Very
just
well.
trying to establish,
We have a qualification that we're talking about his knowledge.
to your knowledge, they all went straight home, right? At least they didn't stick around.
They did not stick around. I have no idea where they went.
Darrell, you tell us that you didn't go straight home. Is that right?
That's correct. I waited in the woods for half an hour.
You waited in the woods for half an hour just waiting to see what was going to happen, right?
I waited to see if, the police would come. I figured alarms would go off because the window was broken.
So after 30 minutes of waiting in the woods, scared that the police were going to come, you decided that you were going to go back to Mr. Fink's property, right?
Yes, so by that time it was pretty obvious that the police were not coming.
You were sure?
It's actually not.
Half an hour, no.
That's the answer.
Your Honor.
Latitude cross-examination.
And so you went back to the garage and you tell us how you had a piece of wire, you fished it through the window.
Objection, Your Honor. Speech making, is she going to ask you a question?
Your Honor, I'm just making sure that I have the story correct. I just want to make sure that the jury, if this is the actual
Okay,
story.
you're going to ask a question?
Yes, I
Okay.
just want to make sure the story is correct, okay? You found a piece of wire, you fished it through the window, somehow you attached it to your skateboard, and you pulled your skateboard out with this wire. Right?
Yes, the trucks of the skateboard which hold the wheels are made of metal, and with a piece of wire which was made the fence, I was able to retrieve it.
This is not exactly it. I'm just trying to make sure. Is that your story?
I was telling you about a skateboard if you don't know if the jury doesn't.
Okay. Well, that is your story, right?
Yes.
Now, Darryl, you found that your skateboard was broken, right?
Yes.
So you tried to use your wire to repair your skateboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you tried to take another run with it, right?
Right.
Now, Darryl, let me get this straight. You did all this repair work and then recreational skateboarding, and just a half an hour before you were hiding in the woods scared to death that the police were going to show up at that very same place?
Again, I waited for half an hour, no police. I figured it would be easier to tell Mr. Fink the next day.
Okay, Darryl.
Pay for the window.
After everything that happened that night when you got home, did you call Mr. Fink?
It was late.
Call Mr.
I didn't
Fink?
have his number, no, I did
Did
not.
you call the police?
No, I did not.
You didn't tell your mom what happened that night, did you?
She was already asleep.
In fact, the next day, the police called your mom, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't until you were questioned by the police that you told anyone where you had been or about the window, right?
Told Tracy.
Objection,
Now-
Your Honor.
Counsel?
In my direct, I asked what happened when the next day when he had learned about the fire. He had already answered the fact that when he was going to go to the police, they had already come to him. It's been asked and answered.
Your Honor, that's exactly why I should be able to cross him on it because it was raised in your direction.
Y'all rule the objection, give the plaintiff some latitude in cross-examination.
Well, Darryl, I only have one more question for you. Basically, it wasn't until you knew that you were caught by the police, until you were questioned by the police, that you told anyone the story about the wire or the window.
Because that's the answer. In cross-examination.
Your Honor,
Counsel, do you care to respond to the objection?
it wasn't answered yet. They objected.
Very well, I'll rule the objection. Allow you to proceed.
So, Darryl, it wasn't until you knew you were caught, you didn't tell anyone the story about the wire or the window until you were questioned by the police, right?
I didn't know what I was caught for. I had no idea there was going to be a fire. I broke a window.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Very well. Sir, thank you. Does the defense have any further evidence?
Yes, we call Fire Marshal Blaze, we understand.
Very well.
Blaze
Blaze Weed, W-E-A-D.
Will you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Sitting with your voice up.
Mr. Weed, would you please state your name and address for the court?
My name is Blaze Weed, and I live at 911 West Palm Street, Centerville.
What is your place of employment and your position there?
I work at Centerville Fire and Rescue, and I'm now fire marshal.
And what is your total experience as a firefighter?
I was a firefighter for 6 years, and in 1993 I was appointed fire marshal, and I've investigated 12 fires since then.
Now, as fire marshal, what are the duties of your job?
Well, I attend and investigate all fires. I determine the cause, estimate the damages, and I write up a report based on my observations and conclusions.
What kind of specialized training, if any, do you have for being a fire marshal?
I received in-service training and attended 2 seminars, one on fire prevention and one on fire investigation.
What kind of previous courtroom experience do you have?
I was an expert witness in 7 trials, civil and criminal.
Your Honor, based upon this witness's previous courtroom experience and his qualifications in the field of fire investigation, I ask that he be submitted as an expert for this court.
Counsel, is there any objection to the witness's expertise?
No objection, Your Honor.
Very well, accordingly, the court will accept the witness as an expert. Proceed, counsel.
Marshal Weed, would you please explain for the court the events of the evening of August the 7th?
Well, I was getting ready for bed and I got a call at about 11:15 about a fire at Fink's Auto Body. I called in the fire to the station and I proceeded to Fink's Auto Body and got there at around 11:25.
And what happened once you got to Fink's?
Well, I saw that the fire had started in the paint shop. I then heard 2 explosions. And then later on, a discussion had occurred regarding the mishandling of flammable products between me and Sam Ender.
Your Honor, I'm showing opposing counsel has been entered into evidence as Exhibit 1. May I press the witness?
Very well, sure.
Mr. Weed, can you identify this document?
Yes, this is my official report, which was prepared regarding the fire.
In your expert report, what do you say was the source of ignition of the fire?
The baseboard heating system igniting the fumes in the air.
How close were the paint cans and cleaning products to this heating element?
Approximately 3 feet.
And the newspapers, how close were they?
The stack of newspapers was 1 to 2 feet from the baseboard heating.
What was the source of the explosions that you heard at Fink's?
The 2 gas tanks of the 2 newly painted cars which were in the paint shop.
What was the role of the broken window, if any?
Well, it may have fed the fire with a little bit of oxygen, but the fire was sustained pretty much with the fumes and the newspaper and the cleaning materials.
According to your report, what time did the fire at Fink's start that evening?
Between 11 o'clock and 11:10 p.m. that night.
And what was the role of the skateboard, if any?
Well, I had found the skateboard upon investigation the next day, and I find it to be inconclusive because you don't need a skateboard to ignite paint fumes.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness is offering information not contained in his affidavit. He said in his affidavit, I'm sorry, in the report, he says that it was likely but inconclusive.
Counsel, do you care to respond?
I'll repeat with her answer. He said it was likely but inconclusive.
Your Honor, I did not hear him say it was likely.
He said it was inconclusive.
What would you add also, according that it's likely,
Well,
sir?
according to my past experience as an expert witness, I have come to know that it is not appropriate to give speculative testimony, and the word likely is speculative, and the word inconclusive is not.
Your Honor, nevertheless, he concluded in his report that it was likely but inconclusive. I just want to make sure the jury knows that.
Sure, and I'll give you latitude to cross-examination as you wish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, what previous knowledge did you have of Mr. Fink and his establishment?
Well, before I became fire marshal, I used to do fire investigations. I did some at Fink's Auto Body, and I also knew about the DER citations accrued by the flammable products close to the heating elements.
After the fire, what did you do as part of your investigation?
Well, I went back to investigate. I found the skateboard, as we said before. I noticed the placement of the paint cans in the newspapers, etc.
Now, this skateboard that you found, was there any connection, proven connection, to Mr. Claiborne?
None proven.
Did you interview anyone in connection with the case?
Yes, Darrell Claiborne and Tracy Azilla.
Now, after the fire, did you do anything with Tracy in connection to this particular case?
We went to look for her skateboard where she says that she had lost it. She said she was running through it and it dropped into a creek. I looked into the creek to find it the next day, and it wasn't there. There was a trickle of water.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Would the plaintiffs like to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor.
Witness.
Fire Marshal Weed, on the morning of your investigation, you noticed the window that had been broken by Darrell Claiborne's skateboard, correct?
Yes.
And this was on the side of the paint shop, right?
Yes.
You then went inside and found some paint cans and cleaning products near the window, correct?
Yes.
Now these are flammable chemicals, aren't they?
Of course.
And their fumes are combustible, correct?
Yes, that's what caused the fire.
And these products were missing their lids, weren't they?
Yes.
In your report you said that these lids did not appear to have come off by the force of explosion, correct?
Of course not, because the explosion occurred after the fire, and the fire was caused by the fact that
saying that something else must have caused these lids to come off?
Possibly. I mean, for all I know, they could have been left over.
Fire Marshal, lying right next to these paint cans, you found a skateboard, didn't you?
Yes.
Now, this skateboard was just to the left and below the broken window, correct?
Yes.
And we know that this window was broken by the skateboard of Darrell Claiborne, don't we?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask Nancy.
Counsel, do you care to respond to the objection?
Your Honor, I have not asked him if he...
First question.
You're right, Your Honor, I'll move on.
Very well.
When the window was broken by the skateboard, it allowed the night air to flow into the garage, didn't it?
Yes.
And in your report, you said that this breeze, once the fire was started, contributed to the fan of the flames, correct?
Slightly.
In your report, you said that the most probable ignition of the fire was the combustion of fumes from the flammable chemicals, correct?
Yes.
Now, would these be the same flammable chemicals that you found lying near the skateboard?
Yes.
And in your report, you also said that the roll of the skateboard was likely, right?
In the report, but after further thought of mine and the fact that I'm under oath, it's inconclusive.
You completed your report on September 8th, correct?
That was when it was typed up by my secretary. It had been prepared from the date of the fire to then.
And it was before you completed this report that you learned that it was Darrell Claiborne's skateboard that was in suspicion of being in connection with the fire, correct?
Yes.
Now, you know Darrell from church, don't you?
Yes.
You have said that you like Darrell a lot.
Why not? I know him.
You have described Darrell as a funny, entertaining kid, haven't you?
He's a nice guy.
Now, Mr. Reed, I know that you consider yourself a professional, but are you sure that your feelings towards Darrell didn't lead you to be a little inconclusive about the role of his skateboard?
Absolutely positive. I'm a professional. I've been doing this for a year. I've investigated 12 fires. Nothing else impedes on my decisions except what I observe at the fire.
Are you really sure, sir?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask Nancy.
I think I've made my point, Your Honor. No
Very well.
further questions.
Sir, thank you. You may step down. Would the defense like to, at this point, would the defense rest its case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. Would the defense like to make a